Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Will County Center for Economic Development's annual Eye Opener event. This is our first time doing the Eye Opener event virtually, and we certainly are enthusiastic to say that it's probably the last time as well. But we're happy to have all of you join us today, and certainly excited to talk about a little bit about what's been going on here at the CED and in Will County. Just a quick rundown of today's events. We're going to have John Grueling join us and talk a little bit about the CED and some of our services. Julie Wilkinson, our Vice President for Investor Relations, is going to talk a little bit more about what we do at the CED and some of our partners. And then we're very excited to have Nate Baguio from Lion Electric joining us this morning. Again, Nate, thank you for being with us and making your way into town. For those of you who've been here, you can see Nate is camping in the CED office this morning, and certainly happy to have him here with us.
Thank you.
And so as we get through the day, we will plan on a little bit of Q&A at the end. So please do use the questions feature of your chat. However, I've been quite clear that if we do run into a situation where we go over, our panelists would be happy to maybe respond to some questions after the event. We can aggregate things and send them out to the group. So certainly appreciate everybody's time today. And as we get started, I would like to introduce John Grueling, President and CEO of the Will County Center for Economic Development, to talk a little bit about the CED and what we do. So turn it over to you, John.
Thanks, Doug. It's good to see that I look like my picture. That's a good thing. As Doug said, I want to welcome all of you to our 2021 Eye Opener. Unfortunately, as many organizations last year, we did not have the Eye Opener due to COVID, but we're optimistic about having virtually all of our future programs in person and live. So we're very excited about that and very happy that things are opening up again. So I want to talk a little bit about the CED. Many of you are investors, and thank you for that. And the neat thing about 2021 is that we are 40 years old this year. And as far as economic development organizations are concerned, that's a very significant watermark. I can tell you, having done this for all of my life, it feels like it, and I have, an organization, public-private partnership like ours, to live 40 years and still maintain its support and successes is pretty amazing. But the mission of the center is pretty simple, and we haven't changed this much over the 40 years. It's basically to improve the quality of life for all residents in Will County by recruiting new companies, offering high-quality jobs and a solid tax base while assisting existing businesses to retain and add jobs. The helping existing businesses is key because, quite frankly, if we're recruiting a bunch of new companies and the existing firms that are here are not happy or successful, we really aren't paying attention to what's really important, and that's the existing companies. We're a private, not-for-profit 501c6 development corporation. Our funding comes from both the private and public investors committed to our missions and principles. And that partnership is something that, quite frankly, has kept us alive and successful for 40 years. We provide services to all private and public entities committed to creating a robust future economic picture for Will County. The history of the center is pretty interesting. And if you look at the basic services that we provide, many of these things we've been doing all 40 years. Some are a little more intense these days than others. As we work with companies, we provide good real estate information on land and buildings, economic data and research, market and labor force information. How do you get to the marketplace from Will County? Business incentives, one-stop shop, project guidance and connections. This is very critical for a lot of companies that don't know much about Will County. We're able to introduce them to leaders in both the public and private sector that could give them some assistance in having a successful location and business opportunity in Will County. Government affairs is always important. And the biggie for us, and it probably distinguishes us from other economic development groups, is our emphasis and focus on infrastructure development. So if we take a quick look at the last 40 years, it's a pretty amazing story, and I'm blessed to be a part of this organization. I've been here 20 years. This is my 20-year anniversary. I never thought I'd be anywhere 20 years, quite frankly. But what's happened here, both before my arrival and then since then, is just nothing short of amazing. Back in 1981, when we were created by a group of business people named Greater Joliet Inc., the predecessor to the CED, unemployment was skyrocketing. The Rust Belt had arrived in Will County. Joliet unemployment was over 26%, 18% in Will County. And we almost hit that during the pandemic, but it was elongated back in the late 70s and early 80s. Just 7 years after the organization was formed, unemployment went down to 5.4%. Housing started booming. The south and southwest suburbs started becoming a real entity as far as the Chicago metro area was concerned. And we were happy to take advantage of that. Land values skyrocketed as well. And then job creation. But back to my focus or my comment about infrastructure. Back in 1988, a lot of people may not realize this, there were no interchanges at Houbolt Road and 80 and Weber Road and I-55. And it was the leadership of the CED and others in the public sector that drove those investments. And if you look at those interchanges today in about 3 or 4 mile radius around them, we're talking about tens of thousands of jobs and hundreds of companies as a result of those investments, and obviously very successful infrastructure investment for us. In '97, this was a big deal for Will County. The Joliet Army ammunition plant had shuttered itself. We didn't need to make bombs in the middle of the country anymore, and the leadership in Will County said, wait a minute, we're going to have a Superfund site unless we do something about this. And so they created the Joliet Arsenal Development Authority and transferred 23,000 acres, formerly of the bomb plant, into new uses. And it's been a raging success, as most of you know. That same year, again, focusing on infrastructure, the CED, along with the Will County Governmental League, many of the mayors along the proposed 355 extension, and Will County leadership started beating on the tollway authority, saying, look, we've got to connect I-55 with I-80 with this I-355 extension. And so we created this grassroots organization, business, labor, government, and we did make a difference, as you'll see, as you know. In 2002, this is definitely a big high sign for us. Centerpoint Properties had taken part of the Joliet Arsenal facility, over 2,000 acres, converted it into a combination industrial park and an intermodal center, and recruited BNSF to open a state-of-the-art facility that basically put us, Will County, on the track to become the largest inland container port in North America. 5 years later, success with the help of labor and business and government. And believe it or not, Governor Blagojevich supported the 355 extension, and we became part of the Tollways Capital Program. And then it was opened on November 11th of 2007. And then shortly after that, the Union Pacific opened their Global 4 intermodal facility in Joliet in Centerpoint's project. And we became, at that point, the largest inland port in North America. Moving forward from that, things just continued to roll. We knew freight was going to be a critical component of our future. And so we created a freight advisory council made up of a lot of industries and businesses in the transportation, distribution, and logistics sectors. And we decided to have them be partners of us as we created this inland port. And our efforts received an award of excellence from Expansion Solutions, a trade magazine. In 2017, the Freight Advisory Council had recommended that we complete a freight plan, and we did. It was produced and released in 2017, the Will County Community Friendly Freight Mobility Plan. And it was adopted by Will County, and it provided a path, if you will, for the future of logistics and transportation growth in the county. Subsequent to that, we knew that continued and new investment in our existing infrastructure was really important. I-80 had been sort of dogged by IDOT for almost 15 years. We created the I-80 Coalition, again, a collaboration of public, private sector and labor. And we decided that we were going to push on the state to accelerate the reconstruction of I-80. And then 2 years later, we received $1.2 billion from Governor Pritzker's Rebuild Illinois Capital Plan to do just that. And we're very excited about that moving forward. It's going to help all of us, as you all know. And then subsequent to that, we're looking at what happened in this past year. And a lot of people were wringing their hands in the business community, not the least of which were a lot of Will County businesses. And our leadership wasn't sure what was going to happen. But you know what? Our core industry sectors proved very resilient during this really, really challenging time. Healthcare, energy, advanced manufacturing, transportation, distribution, logistics, and food processing all became critical industries for dealing with the pandemic. And to a large degree, a lot of our businesses thrived over the last 15, 16 months as a result of that. The other thing is we didn't lay down on the infrastructure investment. So we continued our studies of transportation, the movement of freight in the county, and a number of those projects are about to be completed, and we'll identify future projects that need to be accomplished and built out so that we can continue our economic vitality. And then, of course, as I said, 2021, what can I say, 40 years of moving Will County forward. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Julie Wilkinson, who's our Vice President of Investor Relations, and she's got some good words for you.
Okay, thank you so much, John. Well, good morning, everyone. Since joining this team last fall and having an opportunity to work directly with many of our investors and closely with our board of directors, it's just been abundantly clear that investors in the Will County CED drive the organization's impact. You heard John speak about partnerships and collaboration, and that is really how things work here at the CED. So I want to take just a moment to tell you about our investors because they deserve our thanks and the recognition for the contributions they provide throughout the year. We have nearly 200 investors behind the CED. These are public and private supporters. That public support is about 1/3 of the funding model, and the private support is about 2/3. These are entities representing more than 20 sectors of the local and regional economy. So these are business leaders from media, entertainment, education, healthcare, professional services, professional organizations, utilities, energy, construction, real estate, and many, many more. We have a complete list of our current investors located on our website, and we take pride in publishing that annually in our annual report. Beyond our investor base, we have a board of directors of more than 65 members, which is indicative of the level of activity taking place here in Will County. These are board leaders that contribute their time and expertise to help shepherd the organization and its work. For all of our investors, engagement drives the benefit, and engagement can take place in a number of ways based on the industry that they represent and the focus of their company. For our investors, there are several opportunities to get involved, and we want to highlight just a few of those today. One is the Will Economic Network, which is a powerful network of municipal leadership, coming together, sharing best practices, and doing a lot of learning together through events, through regular communication, and that's been a very successful program. We also have economic development trainings, which help train some of our elected officials and other municipal leaders to better equip them to serve their communities. And that's another great partnership that's been very valuable, particularly for our municipal investors. The CED also provides events and On occasion, we have held summits on special topics. So today's event is a prime example of that. And as John and Doug both noted, we are really looking forward to getting back together in person for our next event, which will be in August. Beyond our events, beyond those municipal opportunities, we have a number of committees of our board of directors in which our investors serve. Our executive committee is led by our board chair, Lydia Garvey, vice president and general manager at Hollywood Casino. We have a finance committee, which shepherds and provides the fiduciary oversight for the organization. We also have an active government affairs committee, which just concluded their work for the spring session. And this is a group that closely monitors legislation that could impact Will County and Illinois businesses. We also have an investor relations committee, which was launched this year in an effort to ensure the value of investment for our investors and help strengthen the investor base by growing it. Any company can become an investor in the Will County CED if they are headquartered here or doing business here or otherwise have a vested interest. So this is a very important committee carrying out our CED work. Our marketing and communications committee is helping lead the work around marketing Will County and promoting the area as a place to live, work, play, and invest. And lastly, our transportation/infrastructure committee. The transportation has always been a key focus for us, as John indicated, and this committee's work has now evolved into a larger focus, and that is on infrastructure for the county as a whole. So it's really an exciting time for this group as they make a pivot and become more inclusive of infrastructure as a whole. This includes water, utilities, even the way we communicate, such as 5G. So we're excited to see that committee continue to develop. This spring, we did a survey of our investors on the board of directors, so about 60 participants, and it was really interesting for me to see the results. These results came in from companies that had less than 5 employees and companies that have more than 500 employees. And across the board, there were only about 6 or 7 things that emerged as key values for investing in the Will County CED. And you can see the recurrence of these themes here, but all of them centered around networking and building relationships, the information that the CED provides on a regular basis to our investors, to our board of directors. And this is information that is helping businesses drive their future and make decisions. We also heard about having access. So this is access to other leaders, access to meet and make introductions, as John indicated earlier, access to information and industry updates that they may not be hearing elsewhere. And then finally, the influence of the organization as a whole. This is a powerful network of people who have come together, all sharing the same common goal of ensuring the rising tide for the Will County economy. One area that we have been really able to make an impact and have an influence because of our investors is transportation. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to John to talk about major Will County transportation projects.
Thanks, Julie. Before we go deep into the transportation, I did want to make a comment. You know, one of the things that, like many organizations, we learned this past year is that we weren't the most inclusive organization. And I think our leadership understood that we needed to be more diverse in our investor makeup, but also in the services we provide. So we launched a minority business support initiative this past year. And right now we're holding listening sessions with small minority business owned businesses and learning what their challenges and expressing what their opportunities might be. So just wanted to footnote that as part of our investor program moving forward. And we're very happy and proud, quite frankly, to be able to take some leadership in that whole space. But back to my favorite topic, transportation. You know, once again, the work that we've done over the last 40 years has really gotten the attention of folks in Washington and Springfield. The IDOT, State of Illinois, just recently released their most current 6-year transportation improvement plan. And once again, we hit the $2 billion mark in terms of commitments for the coming 5-6 years. And that includes the I-80 project and some others that I'll briefly reference in a minute. But that includes 119 projects that have received funding and commitments from the state over the next 6 years. And we're very, very pleased with the work that we've done, the groundwork that has occurred over the last 40 years to make sure people in Springfield and Washington understand the importance that we put on transportation investment. And they're finally coming around and helping us out. The big banana here is the reconstruction of I-80. And this is a project that the state's been looking and working and studying for the last 15 years. And as I mentioned earlier, we created the I-80 Coalition to kind of kick this into high gear. And the result was getting this huge allotment of funding from the Capitol bill. Work is going on right now, but unfortunately, we're not going to see major construction on this corridor for another 2 or 3 years, unless we can go back and work some magic and get IDOT to expedite some of this work. The next 2 projects are very critical for us. I mentioned earlier Weber Road. It didn't exist in 1988, and here we are rebuilding it because of the commerce that's congregated around that intersection. Bolingbrook and Romeoville especially have benefited from this intersection. It's hard to believe. When I was at ISU, I was driving south on I-55, and Route 53 was the only interchange north of Route 30 in Will County. And obviously that didn't get it done, and we're getting it done again with the reconstruction of that. And then the Route 30 interchange as part of the I-80 project, that's already under construction. Should be done later this year. Very exciting project. Other projects that we're very, very excited about and happy to come to fruition. This is a very significant project because it's a true public-private partnership. The Houbolt Road interchange extension and the new bridge over the Des Plaines River. This will connect I-80 directly with the Centerpoint Intermodal centers. And it is a true partnership between the City of Joliet, IDOT, Will County, and Centerpoint Properties, and approaching $200 million of private investment. This is the way we're going to get things done in the future, folks, and I think we're going to be a model for other locations around the country. The next project is significant because it opens up an area of our county that's been limited in terms of access. The I-55 Illinois Route 59 interchange only had one way north and one way south access, and this project will make it a 4-way intersection, if you will, and it will access a huge development, Rock Run Crossing on the east side of 55 north of 80. Very excited about this one. The next project is looking at what's happening south. As we continue to build out both the I-55 north of 80 corridor and the I-80 corridor, a very significant investment area is going to be south of 80 on I-55. And the Lorenzo Road and the 129 interchanges on I-55, just in Wilmington, west of the development area there, is going to start construction here in the next few years. And Elian Partners has a huge development there. The next wave, if you will, of major intermodal type activity will continue south on I-55. The other thing that we're looking at and continue to do is make sure that we don't sit on our laurels, so to speak. We know that to be able to qualify for new funding from the federal government and the state government is to make sure we have plans and programs and studies and engineering work in place. There's some significant investment and studies going on right now. The Moving Will County project looks at both truck routing in the western part of the county and land use plans, and the county is doing that in partnership with the regional planning organization. And we're looking at how do we achieve a balance between truck traffic, truck routing, existing freight land use clusters, and new development, but also segregating passenger traffic from freight traffic as much as we can. The Eastern Will County Freight Mobility Study is very similar. It's looking at primarily east-west connectors and moving freight in that part of the county. Probably the most significant study that is going on and is soon to be completed is the Will County Joliet Intermodal Master Plan. And this really came out of the work that we did during the Will County Community Freight Mobility Plan. And as you can see on this map, it's a little deeper dive on that significant area we call the inland port for Will County, south of 80, east of 55, west of 52, and north of Medewin. And this is a huge area for us. It has been, it will continue to be. But again, unless we identify and plan for proper infrastructure investment, we're not going to be helping our communities. We're going to be creating a situation that impacts the quality of life, and not always in a positive way. So we think that these studies will lead to new transportation improvements. So that really kind of wraps up the transportation picture for us. As you can see, we're not going anywhere when it comes to transportation. It's going to become or remain a significant part of our work. Next up is Doug Pryor, and if you like charts and graphs, you're going to enjoy this next segment. He's got some information that will truly be an eye-opener. Take it over, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you don't like charts and graphs, hang around anyway. I just want to thank some of you for your text this morning, and I will call out the lighting issue here in my office. This was intentional and designed to demonstrate that the sun is shining on Will County. So I do appreciate your feedback on that. So I want to touch on just some of the economic conditions that are ongoing in Will County in a general sense, but also just take the time to focus on a couple of particular things that, frankly, are really unusual still as we move forward from the COVID recession, specifically employment in the labor force and kind of what's going on there, and a little bit about housing and real estate, which frankly is just mind-shatteringly challenging right now. So we'll talk about that, but just sort of a tale of the tape here. Again, from a population standpoint, we're holding our own. A little bit of growth here is good, but even that modest growth has been the third best in the state of Illinois since the last census. Will County performs well. We perform well on housing, and we'll talk more about that. Our gross regional product, like the national gross regional product, was down a bit in 2020, and it's down roughly commensurate with where the national GDP was. So we do expect a pretty significant bounce back in that. And considering where we thought we would be at the beginning of COVID, this is actually an okay number in my estimation. Unemployment is pulling back to what I would call more normalized levels. Obviously, we got up in the mid-teens in April 2020 and had a sustained and prolonged period of elevated unemployment. It's still elevated, but certainly not to the extent we might have expected at this point. Our median household income in Will County continues to rise at a pretty good clip, past $90,000 in the most recent data, fifth highest in Illinois, and significantly outpaces the state and the nation. The U.S. is at about $65,000, and the state of Illinois is a little bit above that, but still under $70,000. Will County residents still continue to do quite well for themselves, which is great news. The number of businesses, this is fascinating to me, actually rose a bit in 2020. So looking at Q4 2020 versus Q4 2019, we're up a little more than 1% in the number of total businesses. And what's interesting about this is I don't think anybody expected that or could have anticipated that change. I think it speaks a lot to the support programs that were put together both at the national and frankly at the state and local levels as well. We saw our communities, and Julie alluded to the WEN group, our communities and our community leadership and economic developers were clever and supportive and really found ways to keep businesses going through the last year, and very much appreciated. And then housing. So housing building permits were up 11% year over year. We're going to talk more about housing later, but housing is really in an extraordinary place for Will County. First, though, I want to talk a little bit just about employment and labor force and what's going on here. And maybe One little thing you didn't know or haven't thought about in a while, but I do want to call out. We look at the last 10 years, Will County remains number one in Illinois for job creation. Even following the effects of COVID, even following the little pullback that we saw, Will County continues to outperform the state and the region in terms of job creation. And it's a position we're very proud of. I mean, this leadership spot has been Will County's for some time. We continue to really drive job growth in the state of Illinois. That said, on a national level, job growth has been challenged. So post-COVID, we've definitely seen a comeback overall. But nationally, we're down more than 7 million jobs as compared to where we were post-COVID. In Will County, that number is much, much more modest. We're down maybe a couple thousand jobs versus where we were immediately pre-COVID. So we're definitely performing a bit better. But this trend is really extraordinary in terms of what we're seeing. But bear in mind, this jobs number means people who are at companies and actively employed, right? There's another side to this, and that is job openings. It's not as though companies aren't attempting to hire. For those of you that follow the job openings data, which, I don't know who does, but for those of you that do, you probably already know more than 9 million job openings in the most recent data nationally. To give you some context for this, I mean, this is extraordinary. We've never seen anything like this. And a month ago, we were looking at 8 million job openings, and that was new ground. So we've definitely seen a huge increase in companies attempting to hire people. That's a big deal. And even now, as we have elevated unemployment numbers, we're only looking at 1.1 unemployed persons per job opening. This is historic. When this was happening prior to the recession, we were just astonished at this 1-to-1 ratio. So we really are seeing an emphasis on hiring, and it's broad-based. So these are national job openings over the course of the last, in April, the most recent data. You can see transportation's out front. The bounce back in leisure and hospitality is a big deal. There are a lot of job openings there. But what we're seeing is there's a broad base of job openings, and companies are trying to hire. And, it's not just posting the jobs. Wages are up a bunch as well. So in Will County, as we look at wage structure, just Q4 2020 over Q4 2019, it's up 13%. That's a huge jump in 1 year. And I think more importantly, from our perspective, we're seeing much stronger wage growth at the lower end of the wage scale. So it roughly double the wage growth in jobs in the less than $20 an hour range, as opposed to those in the higher wage ranges. So we're seeing great wage growth. We're seeing it where it should be, and frankly, long overdue in terms of where it is on the pay scale. But this wage pressure isn't necessarily leading people back into the labor force. And that's what we continue to struggle with. So as we look at Will County's labor force, in other words, the number of people who have looked for a job in the last, either currently working or looked for a job in the last 4 weeks, is how we measure this. Our labor force is down pretty significantly, about 15,000 people from 2 years ago. It undulates over time, but this pullback is extraordinary. Nationally, we've seen more than 2 million people fewer in the labor force than there were prior to the pandemic. And so as we look at this, there's this disconnect, right, of, there's a lot of jobs out there, but people aren't working, what's happening. And the reality is there remains some hesitance to go back into the workforce. I'd be remiss, we hear a lot of narrative. We hear a lot of narrative from the chambers and from business organizations that the additional unemployment dollars from the federal level are slowing people reentering the workforce. I'm not sure that we have a lot of data to necessarily support that argument. What we're hearing, certainly it's part of the picture, but what we're hearing at the local level, and I want to give credit to our Workforce Investment Board, Caroline Portlock and her team, that have really done some deep dive on this and tried to figure out, what's going on. Here in Will County at the end of May, we had more than 21,000 unique job postings out there. It's not like it's just a national thing. It's happening here at home too. There are a lot of job openings. When they survey people and ask why they're not coming back to the workforce yet, one of the big things that we continue to hear is childcare. Childcare is a big factor. And even with school being out and us being into the summer camp enrollment is exploding. but it's capped. People are short-staffed in that space, so it creates, unfortunately, a bit of a cycle in terms of how people can go back to work. We're also hearing, certainly paying compensation, but flexibility. I think if COVID has taught the workforce anything, it's the value of flexibility in their work in terms of time, hours, whatever they can do to sort of make it work in their current life. We also continue to hear a little bit of a hesitance to go back to work due to the virus. So there's a broad mix of things, and I'm very enthusiastic. I'll close this by saying this. I do believe that as we get back into school and get back into what I would call normalized scheduling, we will see people re-enter the labor force, but it's certainly something that continues to put a lot of pressure on our industry. We hear this every day. John, Julie, and I probably get a phone call every day asking about labor force, and it's a big deal for our outlook for the future. But of course, it's not just the people here, right? We want to attract more folks to Will County to take all of these jobs we're creating. And I think, as we look at our housing picture, that's important. Another bit of good news, I'll start with housing. Some of you may have heard me say this before. Will County's #1 in Illinois again in single family housing construction. And that gap actually grew year over year. So this is 2020 single family building permits in Illinois. Will County's doing a great job in this space. In fact, for the last 2 years, 1 in 7 single family homes that were built anywhere in Illinois were built in Will County. That's a big deal. People want to live here. And it's something that we continue to perform well in that space. But even with the building being up, it's not enough. We see sales are up year over year. That's great news. Certainly happy to see that. But we're seeing extraordinary market constraints right now in the housing space. I know there were a couple people on this in the real estate space, and you definitely know this story. But Will County's housing inventory, this is just a look at the last couple of years in our housing inventory. We are 76% below our 10-year average in housing inventory, and we're down almost 70% just year over year. It's extraordinary. And of course, constrained inventory leads to limited time on the market, right? This stat kills me. In April 2021, the median time for a house on the market in Will County, 5 days. I'm making 5 days. And so we hear this story nationally, we hear it regionally, but it's more acute in Will County. The national average is 19 days. Will County, 5 days in April. A stunning number, a stunning share of houses are off the market within 2 weeks' time in Will County. I mean, we're finding ourselves in a place where there just isn't enough inventory to meet the incredible demand in the county. And of course, when you've got not enough supply and an awful lot of demand, huge pricing pressure, and we're seeing that. So in just 1 year, the median sale price of a home in Will County is up almost 15%. But, when we look at that, we have to be a bit cautious. Well, maybe just the bigger homes are selling COVID, people need more space. No. The price per square foot is also up 14%, which means it's across the spectrum of housing. We're seeing this extraordinary shift in terms of pricing and availability, and it's an incredible mix. And what I would say here, as we look at this, is you've heard me advocate for this before. I will advocate for it as long as anybody will listen. We need more housing of all kinds. If we want to attract the workforce of the future, if we want to attract younger people, if we want to keep our retirees here in Will County, we need a broad mix of housing product, and we need more. I've read articles this week, lumber prices are falling, hoarders are starting to sell. Super, let's build some more housing. So it's certainly something that we're excited about. And it's hard not to be enthusiastic that people want to join us here in Will County. With that, an awful lot of housing needs to get built. Some other real estate asset classes, I'm a little less sure. And I just want to touch on these briefly. We've heard a lot of conversation about office space and what happens post-COVID. Is there going to be a move to the suburbs? How are people going to manage office in the future? The truth is, we're not so sure yet. What I can say with absolute certainty is offices in the downtown space continue to struggle. So this is a look at office vacancies in the Chicago market. So it's just specific to Chicago because, frankly, they're our largest and most active office market. In just the last 2 years, they've added 8 million square feet of vacant space. That's not a great sign. And as people come back to the work, we certainly hear a shift. I've heard a lot of arguments that, well, people might need more space and it might balance out. I'm not so sure yet. What we haven't seen is this push to build gleaming office parks in the suburbs, and I'm not so confident that that's going to happen. But certainly, we are keeping an eye out for targeted development, smaller spaces, co-working spaces, co-located spaces with other industries. We want to capture this opportunity if office wants to move to the suburbs, but we're definitely still in a position where the market's uncertain. That said, in Will County, the office space situation has been really steady. So this is a look at our vacant space over the same period. Do we have some vacancy? Yes, but it's been really modest, and our vacancy rate is largely unchanged over the course of sort of this COVID period. So steady in the suburbs, and this is true throughout the suburbs, largely steady in the office space. But the urban centers continue to struggle. And so we look for opportunities there. But the truth is, it's awfully difficult to forecast where that goes today. That said, similar scenario in retail. We're seeing more steadiness in that asset class than I think we would have thought. I don't want to spend too much time on the retail assets. I mean, in Will County's market, we had a big pickup with the Costco project in Plainfield in terms of new retail square footage. But overall, it's been a pretty steady market. So this is a look at Will County retail vacancy and Chicago retail vacancy in red over the course of the last few years. Pretty flat, pretty steady. And I think, again, at the beginning of COVID, we might not have anticipated this, but so far, pretty steady. And we're certainly happy to see that. Now, the big threat to retail has been this shift to e-commerce. And I do want to just give a quick comment on that as well. When COVID first hit, we saw a huge jump in the share of total sales that go to e-commerce. You can see over time, I went with a longer trend line here just to give you sort of this impression of how sort of slow and steady this march has been from bricks and mortar retail toward e-commerce. As share of market, immediately prior to COVID, we were looking at numbers in the 11% range. And immediately, almost overnight, e-commerce captured a much larger share of total sales. Not surprising, right? People were concerned about going out of their homes. One of the things I talked about at our year-end event was, hey, how much of this sticks, right? How much of these behavioral changes stick around? And what we're finding is, I think less than I certainly thought, and maybe a lot of people thought, we're seeing this march back to trend. And so in the last couple of months, e-commerce has fallen, again, not back to where it was, not all the way back to the trend line, but it's pretty close, right? So we may see some lasting behavioral shift, but not quite as much as we thought. That said, e-commerce continues to just crush bricks and mortar sales in terms of growth. In just the last year, e-commerce sales are up 30% versus 3.6% for all sales. That e-commerce growth number in the high 20s% year over year has been very consistent. 3.6% for all sales is actually quite modest or quite big. We've seen bricks and mortar retail overall growth be closer to flat, less than 1%. So e-commerce is going to continue to grasp more of the market share. There's no doubt that that's the case, but it might not be as abrupt and lasting as we originally anticipated. And e-commerce, as we look at this, drives the last asset class I'll talk about, which is, of course, industrial. As e-commerce grows, we need to continue to add industrial space near population centers. And we've definitely seen that manifest itself in terms of industrial, specifically within Will County. Our vacancy rates continue to fall. This is one of the lowest vacancy rates on record that we have right now. Our industrial market is large, it's complex, and it's really seen a lot of space get taken up. Over the last 5 years, more than 100 million square feet of space has been leased in Will County. And if you look at the whole Northeast Illinois region, so the 5 counties of Northeast Illinois, Will County's been more than half of all of the industrial demand for the entire region over the last several years. So it continues to grow, it continues to expand. and really is largely a function of a lot of this e-commerce growth and need to be nearer the population centers. And with that, I'll close on just a little bit of project activity. And as I talk industrial, again, as we look at some of our largest transactions in Will County just over the last couple quarters, really reporting since our last event, we see that this emphasis, Wayfair, Walmart, Amazon on e-commerce type plays. And so that's an area where we continue to see things grow, but certainly not the only area. For those of you that talk to me with some regularity, you've probably heard me say, or if you talk to your community economic developers, this has been the busiest spring I can remember in 12 years in and around this industry. Illinois has generated a lot of interest from a huge variety of different industry sectors, and we're certainly excited to see this. This is just a snippet of industry sectors that we've worked with over the course of the last 12 months, and certainly we've got a lot of projects continuing to roll in. They're exciting, it's great, and frankly, not just domestic growth. We've seen a tremendous additional emphasis in foreign direct investment in the United States and in Illinois in particular. Just last week, we did the Select USA Summit. Again, first time virtual, actually worked pretty well. The largest year we've ever had for this program in terms of participants, companies from more than 80 international markets. It was just some of the meetings that we took in the last week. This is in the last 7 days. Companies from different countries, a lot of different industries, and a lot of interest in Illinois. Illinois continues to be a strong draw and a magnet. I've got to give a lot of thanks to the administration and in particular to Intersect Illinois, which has really been a great partner in this program and really helps deliver these projects to the region. And the reason I want to talk about foreign direct investment today is because, frankly, it's a big deal for us and a big part of our path forward. You may not know, but Will County has two of the biggest and most important FDI projects in the state right now. Jackson Generation, J-Power is a Japanese company that chose to invest here in Will County. Their power plant currently under construction, more than $1 billion investment in Will County. I asked for some labor updates for them this week in advance of this meeting. More than 1,100 people currently working on site building that project. More than 900 union craft labor positions working there right now this morning, and more than 2.1 million total labor hours in the project to date. This has been an extraordinary project for Will County. And again, you've heard me mention this in the past. The praise for Will County's workforce coming out of this project from the companies working to build these nationally, best they've worked with. And this is so exciting for us. And again, FDI. And another huge foreign direct investment project that we have here that we can't be more excited about. Lion Electric. Lion Electric is a Canadian company making their first major production investment in the United States here in Joliet and Will County. I don't want to take too much of Nate's thunder away. We're so happy that you were here and able to join us. And I'm gonna pivot to Nate to maybe talk a little bit more about his project and sort of what they're doing. Nate Baguio has been working in the transportation industry for over 30 years, and I love this. His career has taken him from behind the wheel of a school bus to launching the largest deployment of heavy-duty electric vehicles in North America. That's so cool. He's the vice president of sales for Lion Electric Company. Since joining Lion in 2018, he's helped position them as the leader in electric school bus deployments across North America. He's worked on several transit projects throughout California, large projects in LA County, and certainly a real leader in this space. I've had the opportunity to hear his pitch a couple of times, and he's a great rep for Lion and for the industry. And with that, Nate, I will turn it over to you. Nate Baguio.
Thank you, Doug. I'm really pleased to be here, really pleased to be here in Will County as well. As Doug mentioned, we're launching a significant project, not just for Lion, but for the electric mobility industry. We really are at a turning point in the United States or in the world for that matter, of really changing historically how transportation has operated. It is going electric. It is going zero emission. In all of the things I'm seeing, the demand for these vehicles, this is inevitable. This will happen. And with that, Lion has selected Will County with a lot of help from the CED, I can say. So thank you, John, Doug, and Julie, to really select the right site from the standpoint of labor, from the standpoint of the university system, and where Will County is positioned in the country was really key in our decision. And, I hope I don't lose the charts and graphs crowd, because my presentation is almost exclusively pictures of buses and trucks. But I really wanted to share with everybody what's going to be coming out of this factory starting next year. We at Lion, we move very quickly. We have to. There are a lot of changes coming. And when you look at what's happening with medium and heavy duty transportation, there's over $50 billion at the federal level being considered for specifically zero emission electric vehicles, and even specifically school buses. So there is a lot of movement on this. There is a lot of demand for these vehicles, because it's just simply the new way that things are going to be happening with medium and heavy duty. School buses have already been taking kids to school for 5 years. We're beyond the pilot stage. We have data on these vehicles already. Fleets like Amazon, IKEA, UPS are already moving forward in the space, FedEx. So it's not just the municipal sector, but it's the private sector as well. We started in 2008, but quickly made the pivot to electric. And, we're an overnight success, 12 years in the making, is what our CEO says all the time. One of the reasons we've been successful is we started developing this early and have really invested in our technology. And again, when you look at this, we're not just school buses. We're building trucks, class 6 through class 8. We're building shuttle buses. And looking forward, there's utility bucket trucks, ambulances. Once you've really figured out how to make EV mobility work, it's transferable to so many different platforms. Next slide, Doug. And one of the other key things that Lion is doing, and why there's really, you can see the longevity of Lion and why we've chosen to open the largest manufacturing facility of its kind in North America, in Will County. Is we are building these to be electric. All of our vehicles are born to be electric. We are not retrofitting them into another chassis. We build all of it. We control that supply chain, the design, how they work. And that was a necessity. Retrofitting is not, in our opinion, the way to go. You really need to build these vehicles for what they are, because they're truly a different thing. When you lift the hood on any of our vehicles, there's no engine in there. So it's really a completely different vehicle. And when you're talking about these vehicles, they work, they move, they do what they're supposed to do in their given duty cycle. But what businesses are seeing, and this is data we already have, some real key indicators are 60% less cost in maintaining the vehicle, 80% less energy cost to fuel the vehicle. And, this is through some pretty robust use across the country. Cold climate, hot climate, there's really an economic argument for switching to EV. In a previous slide, it showed, 30,000 parts in a diesel vehicle versus 7,000 in an electric vehicle. So there's a whole lot less to maintain, and it really simplifies the process and keeps your vehicle on the road. Lion is not only growing in Will County, but we have service centers across the country. You can see quickly here where we already are and where we're going to make sure that we can service our vehicles and take care of our customers. Doug and I had a great conversation with a local school district and are working on a partnership to help develop the future engineers, the future laborers at our factory right here locally in Will County. There's a great workforce here, and we want to start developing that labor force as early as possible through partnerships through your different education programs, secondary school, community college, and then on up to the university level. Technicians of the future will need different skills, and Will County is ready for that. And I'll real quickly just kind of give you an idea of what's going to be coming out of the factory here in Will County. We will be building all of the major types of school buses you see on the road. Special needs buses, the most typical one, the Lion C that you see here in Illinois, is already operating here. The state is already funding incentives to get more EV vehicles on the road here in the state. But just again, to give you an idea, because Illinois is also picking up its EV deployments, states like California, the governor's budget has $3.2 billion specifically to put these type of vehicles on the road, and they'll be built in Illinois. And also, it's not just limited to school districts. We're building a shuttle bus, a minibus that can be used for sporting events, airports, university shuttles, municipal fleets. This vehicle will last twice as long as its counterpart, a cutaway type vehicle. And again, we'll use 80% less fuel, 60% less maintenance, and can go 150 miles on a charge and be available to charge during the middays and the evenings. Next slide. The trucking part of, and everybody on this call knows that the trucking industry, really the sky is the limit from number of vehicles and the number of uses of these types of vehicles. There's a big push to electrify school buses, but the trucking industry is really what is going to launch EV into the next level. We're already, again, selling to Amazon. We've already got trucks on the road. And again, one of the real distinctive things about Lion is when I talk about our vehicles, they're already out there doing it. These aren't plans. We're not releasing them a year from now. These are on the road, taking packages throughout cities throughout the United States. Next slide. One of the other great things, these are some of the platforms that are coming up. The refuse truck, all electric, no hydraulic arms. You can literally pick up refuse in a city or a county at 4 in the morning, and I doubt you'd get any phone calls about noise. The vehicles are incredibly quiet, and also gives municipal and public fleets a lot more flexibility. We will be building an ambulance as well on an electric platform. And when you look at these vehicles, I really urge people to look beyond their base use. These are also power plants on wheels. We have a pilot project in Florida where if there's a hurricane, you drive the school bus to the hurricane shelter, plug the bus into the hurricane shelter, and you're now providing power to that. Lights go out at a school, you plug in your school bus, your refuse truck, the lights come back on at your school. So it's going to give a lot of flexibility. Utilities are very interested in these vehicles because once all the school buses are done taking the kids back home, they plug back in and the grid can pull that remaining power out of the batteries to offset peak use. So there's a lot of vehicle to grid integration opportunities, energy storage opportunities. Transportation has gone beyond wheels on the road. It is a whole new industry and is going to benefit the general public in many more ways to come. Next slide, Doug. The other thing, and it was interesting to listen to John talk about transportation infrastructure, and transportation is my favorite topic too, John, just so you know. But getting charging infrastructure through our freeway corridors, in our industrial areas, in our shopping mall parking lots is going to be key to what we're doing here, and also at residential sites for folks. So one thing Lion has done in order to keep this momentum going, because when you're talking about training a technician, installing charging specifically for vehicles, a lot of this expertise isn't necessarily out there. So we've created, in order to assist fleets to expedite the purchase of our vehicles, the Lion Beat, which puts in telematics, so you can see state of charge on your battery and all of the other telematics that fleets are measuring for miles, idle time, all those types of things. There's no ASC certification right now for an electric vehicle, so we've created our own through the Lion Academy, which is a training program which integrates, again, as I mentioned, with education systems, but also with fleet operators. They need to know how to do some of the basic maintenance themselves, so we've just created the standard. Lion Energy will work with utilities and fleets to get infrastructure in. Grant team will help get fleets incentives on these vehicles. They are still more expensive than their counterparts. However, there's grant money that's changing that very quickly. Our prices have dropped over 50% in the last 4 years. So the trend is going in the right way. So with that said, I think it's really important that, and I think most people do understand this, that there is a very distinct change happening in one of the most important sectors in the United States. And the centerpiece of this cutting edge change is happening in Will County. And I think that's a really exciting thing for the area. I know it's an exciting thing for the Lion Electric, and we're excited about being a good partner and being a local here in Will County.
Thank you so much, Nate. Very much appreciate that. And you're not alone in your excitement. Certainly from us here at the CED and around the community, we're so happy to have you here. And we do have just a little bit of time for Q&A. We received a couple in the chat, and if you don't mind, I will maybe jump in. And I think, Nate, let's face it, Lion's the exciting bit. Most of these are going to be for you, so that's okay. I'm wondering, you and I actually touched on this a little bit yesterday. One of the things that's exciting about your product is sort of the life cycle of the batteries themselves. We received questions about the batteries and kind of how the use functions. And you had mentioned some of the sort of useful life cycle of them. And I wondered if you could touch on that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. And again, it just goes back to my urging people to kind of look at these vehicles as a different thing. When a battery, after, depending on life duty cycle, between 10, 15 years, possibly beyond, is no longer useful to make a truck move, there's still a lot of energy left in these batteries. And there are movements already underway to take the batteries from the vehicles and use them for energy storage. There's quite a bit of solar energy being generated in the West and in the Southwest, wind storage in the middle of the country, and hydropower in different places as well. But as this energy is generated, there needs to be storage for that. So, for example, we were talking to the Minooka School District yesterday, school district in Minooka, and once it's no longer, useful for the school bus to have that battery, you can put it in your maintenance facility. You can put it at a school site. If power goes out, or maybe you just want to use your own power instead of paying for it from the grid, you can do so. We're really looking at recycling really being something 30 plus years away. So these batteries will be useful for the foreseeable future, and they're built to be recycled as well. So you won't see stacks of old batteries in a landfill anywhere in the U.S.
That's very cool. So one more question we had come in. It's about charging infrastructure, and I know the question is Lion building out charging stations? I think maybe for your application it's a little more specific to the user, but can you maybe touch on the charging infrastructure for your product?
Yeah, it's very key to the success of what we're doing, and is really a focus of the Jobs Act that's on the table now, as well as getting electric infrastructure up and running, and and also the flexibility of that charging. If you're a school bus, you can kind of slow charge or level 2 charge overnight and your bus will be fully charged, ready to go in the morning. If you're on a more aggressive duty cycle, you're going to be looking at DC fast charging or level 3 charging. The box trucks that Amazon is using, for example, can charge between 2 and 4 hours, depending on the charging amenity. So very quickly, you can get the vehicle back on the road, generating revenue for the private fleet. And what we're doing at Lion is really working with partners that are very focused on infrastructure installation to give our customers the flexibility, not just today, but in the future as they grow their electric fleet. It's a great question, Doug. It's a very key part of what we're doing. And in driving around Will County, I've seen a lot of electric car chargers around here as well. So the shift to the heavy duty charging is going to be key to the success here.
Great, thank you. So another question focuses specifically on, training EV technicians. So sort of a new generation of techs in this space. And you had alluded a little bit to, seeking educational partnerships, at the local level with the high schools. I know we've had some previous conversations regarding some university level training as well. And I'm wondering if you can comment maybe on potential training or apprenticeship programs, or maybe even, utilize what's currently going on in Quebec as an example for maybe what your vision is for that regionally, and what Lion's going to need in that space, or maybe more importantly, what the industry is going to need in that space.
Yeah, and I think it's a very layered question. There are diesel mechanics that have been working on these vehicles for, decades, that have been doing a great job and certainly know their way around a vehicle. And at the end of the day, the suspension, the brakes, there are some components on these vehicles that are the same products that they've been working on their whole career. But again, there is a shift in electric mobility to doing things a new way. And we will need to train the workforce to do that. One of the things we've been doing specifically in California is working with the community college district in their trade schools to, make that shift to the technician of the future. Bringing them in, letting them see the vehicles be manufactured so they can see what's in there before it's all put together, and running them through the Lion Academy. We have virtual training programs. We have on-site training programs. We will go to the university or the community college or the high school, for that matter, to do these trainings and also stir some interest in this sector of employment. There are a lot of choices here. And it's not just, as you know, Doug, not just about Lion. It's also all the suppliers that we are going to draw to Will County that are going to be key to this very large factory that's going to put out 20,000 vehicles per year. So there's going to be technology even beyond the building when you're talking the truck, onboard charging, all the electrical components, software development. So the opportunities are really endless. And, Will County is really the centerpiece. And I think Lion is really the centerpiece for developing, this technological hub and ecosystem.
Oh, thank you for that. And I think you mentioned, this is a very large facility. Just something that came up last night. I'm just going to softball it in there. When this is completed, what will be the location of the largest EV medium-duty vehicle production facility in North America? I forget.
It'll be in Will County, specifically in Joliet.
There it is. That's excellent. We're so excited to have you, and excited to continue working with you on this project. So with that, I will go ahead and as we close on time here, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Turn it back over to John to wrap up and talk about some of our upcoming events.
Thanks, Doug. I actually could listen to Nate a little longer if he wants to talk some more. What the things you said and what we've learned over the years focusing on infrastructure is proving out what the CED has known all along. And it's so exciting to enter into this new paradigm and to even be a leader in this paradigm. And for the CED and the Will County communities and the leadership here to be a part of that, it's just, it's fantastic. And welcome to Will County. And I know that this is going to be a fantastic relationship. In fact, I've already put you down as a member of our infrastructure coalition. So you're gonna be getting invited to those meetings. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today. We've got some upcoming events. Again, these will be live on August 11th. We're going to have our second economic report of the year. The focus is workforce and getting back to work, and bringing in some experts to talk about the workforce challenges post-COVID and moving forward, and what is the workforce going to look like 12, 18, 24 months from now, and how does Will County address that? We're hosting one of our training sessions for local elected and appointed officials on September 28th, what we call our boot camp for economic development. Very excited about being able to offer that. And then our annual report to investors will be, again, live in person on December 3rd, as it normally is the first Friday of every December. So with that, I want to thank everybody for participating and joining us this morning. I want to tip my hat one last time to our sustaining investors. But all of our investors are sustaining in a lot of ways, and we appreciate your support. And if there's anything we can do to help you be more successful, or if you need anything at all from the CED, I think you know how to reach us. So again, thanks for joining us. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.